my co-host. He's finally back with me, Anthony Marquetta. Anthony, how are you doing today?
Do. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. That's wild. That's wild, man. Tell me all about it.
You wouldn't believe it if I told you.
That's it, I deal with internet schizophrenics every day, Anthony, and they like me for some reason. It's because I'm a very credible man.
It's a nice way of saying gullible, but okay.
Well,
Uh,
I don't actually believe it. I just said it's credible.
Fair. I lost the thread of this discussion. What were we talking about today?
I don't know, man. Well, we're ranting.
Right.
So you got to get your vinegar up.
That
Your
that's
blood
fair.
and vinegar. Listen, you have to understand, Anthony. You just told me that somebody had a bad take on the internet.
I did.
It's unacceptable.
It is.
Are you gonna are you gonna tell me about it? Like you were just telling me about it for our good readers?
Oh, I didn't realize that was the setup for me to start ranting. I'm
Anthony.
just waiting for the setup, Ben.
Anthony.
What?
All right, guys. No, this is kind of gonna be rant central. Things that bother us, but not really like in the sense of, oh, someone cut us off. No, but just like things we find on the internet, books. Um, I'll talk about women probably. I don't know.
Nice. I like it. Uh, No, in all seriousness, like there's also like I'm gonna say in advance, Ben he can get tell you what he wants, but in my case, don't really take any of this too seriously. It's mostly just things that mildly annoyed me over the week, like interactions that that I had. None of it's very serious. Oh, you
It,
could
it,
ride a giant bug thing. That's pretty dope. Uh, I mean, for all
it,
I know, Ben could be like, "No, I'm on the verge of suicide because of this fucking girl." Uh, oh, did I wait? Did I curse too quickly? Are we gonna get demonetized?
no,
Ha! That's a joke because it assumes we'll be monetized. Anyway,
that's
uh,
hurtful.
yeah, like yeah, for all I know, Ben could be very serious, but I'm just gonna say like with whatever I say, if you go like, oh man, don't you're taking this too hard. Like I assure you, I am not taking it hard at all. Um, but yeah, the first thing has been this weird thing on Twitter that's been pointing out where they've been getting that quote from Tolkien where he goes, "There's some good in this world and it's worth fighting for." They've been saying like, "Oh, it's a Tolkien quote." People are going, "Excuse me, Tolkien did not say that. Say that. That is not a Tolkien quote." And my immediate reaction to this was, "But it is a Tolkien quote." Like I remember the scene. I remember reading it. Like Sam says it to Frodo. Frodo's all depressed. Uh, it's a very moving scene. It's one of the most famous pieces of dialogue in the entire series, actually. Arguably the most famous. And then they go like, "No, that's it." And it seems like there are two lines of argument here, both of them wrong, and both of them predicated on the theory, I suppose, that now that they've said it, they got to double down and be right. Uh, One of the lines of argument involved them going, "No, it's from the movie," because the quote from the book was different. Well, if you look up the quote from the different, Sam says, "There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and that good is worth fighting for." So the only difference is that Sam makes it clear that the quote is addressed to Frodo. I don't think that that's a substantial difference to say that Jackson changed the quote. Jackson didn't change the quote. Like that's not he didn't change it at all. It's just that Sam was making it clear who he was addressing. That is clearly a quote that originated with J.R.R. Tolkien. Like that is a perfectly acceptable shorthand that does not change the meaning of the quote in any way. The second thing that people will do to sometimes salvage this is go, no, Tolkien didn't say it, Sam said it. And I'm like, but Sam's not real. You know that, right? Like, I like The Lord of the Rings as much as the next guy, you know. There's a certain thing in like the Pulp Rev circles where They will try and be. I think they're annoyed at the prevalence of Lord of the Rings, and they try and I don't know, like they try and go. It's not as good as everyone says. I'm kind of on both sides here. Where yes, I think it's talked about too much to a certain degree, but also I think it's as good as everyone says. Like it's one of the great books of literature. It would be like saying that you talk about the Iliad too much or Paradise Lost too much, right? Maybe not quite as good as them, but in that discussion on that level, you know. Nevertheless, there are other things, Still, like Sam's not real, friends. It's a great book, but it is a work of fiction created by the man J.R.R. Tolkien. The guy who penned those words was J.R.R. Tolkien. You can't actually quote Sam. Sam doesn't exist. He's a made up character. Like, do we need to explain how fiction works? Maybe. So,
Yes, actually,
yeah. So
but continue.
you make things up that aren't actually real and you write them down and then we read them. But when you say that Sam said this in the book, it is an accepted fiction for an or I'm sorry, I'm assuming you already know what that word means. It's an accepted shorthand where we all agree that the character didn't actually say this because he doesn't actually exist. We're just all pretending that he did. But if you were to quote the book, you would be quoting J.R.R. Tolkien. You would not be quoting Sam. So I don't know, man. Like yeah, that's my rant. I got nothing else to say there except the only thing I could think of for like why this became a thing is that people wanted to feel snooty about it.
Yeah, probably. Well, it's like Tolkien has been one of those things that people try to tear down to make themselves feel good. It's like a literature professor saying, "Actually, guys, Shakespeare wasn't that great." And it's like, dude, I don't care. He absolutely was that great. You were just being difficult at best.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
that's the most charitable way to say what you're doing. You're being difficult. You're deciding, "Oh, I'm gonna say the controversial thing and blah 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 blah." No, actually, let me put it like this. We live in a slopified society
We live in a
where
society.
the women shut up, Anthony. Uh, the women, buy their books of pornography and stuff like
Women.
that in Barnes and Noble. Listen, fellas, were women a mistake? We're asking the big questions here. If they were so good, why didn't God make them in the garden at first? Let's be real, it was almost an
He had a
afterthought.
better idea.
Uh,
What?
as I like apply the Joker face paint to myself. Listen, listen, I was her angel and I was her devil, and she didn't
You
like
wanna know how
either
I
of them.
got these
It's
scars?
hard. My Floyd was terrible BPD. And one day she sees that I got a text from a woman called mom, and she didn't like that one bit. Oh,
Incredible.
stupid. It fits though. All
It
right,
does.
but it's like back 30 years ago, people did actually read books for quality. All right. If your book wasn't good, it was not remembered. Like when you reach like the 50-year gap and you are still remembered, and not for being a total jackass or a heinous criminal who should have been murdered in the street, um, and not in Minecraft, in the real street. Uh, like you had a good book. You had a great thing going. Like C.S. Lewis is going to be, we're going to talk about C.S. Lewis too. Uh, in glowing terms for C.S. Lewis. But like with Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and all these guys, they survived because they wrote fantastic stories. Uh, Things like Grandmother's Wonderful Chair and The Wishing Chair again, which are both books I have in my library from my mother, are not remembered. Like maybe there's some British grandmothers who remember them, uh, but fundamentally no one remembers them, and they're perfectly fine books. You can spend a lovely afternoon watching children have weird adventures in the Candyland kingdom that they're stuck in, with a wicked pixie who keeps stealing candy from people. It's a very strange and surreal book. But like fundamentally, do you think people like Scalzi are going to be remembered in 50 years? No, absolutely not. Maybe some people are going to remember him in like the second or third orders, but certainly not, the first. Maybe not, the Martian, just the Martian might be remembered of Andy Weir's oeuvre, but not his other sci-fi books, not his web comic or anything else like that. Like there's a hierarchy to remembrance for these things. Like there's a reason why everyone remembers Conan the Barbarian, um, and John Carter and all these jazz, and then some people remember the second one, like the Queen of the Black Fleets or whatever her name is. Some of those women authors, Zelazny, Paul Anderson. They remember. Though I'm kind of mixing up my eras actually. Uh, Tanith Lee. People, maybe she's a third tier, but people remember those because they produce quality works. But they just like whatever their qualities. Andre Norton is of the second tier. Whatever their qualities, they just did not achieve the first rank, and that's okay. Like you know, not everyone's going to achieve the first rank. I know I'm not going to achieve the first rank. Maybe I'll be able to produce a future book, of the first rank, but nothing I've got is of that kind. And you do need widespread publication, which most of us don't have these days, uh, which is also strangling literature. But don't worry about that. I'm not going to rant about that. Well, I'll probably rant about that. It's like Pilgrim's Progress. There are actually hundreds of little allegorical stories. The English love allegory. They wrote tons of it. Guess what? We only remember Pilgrim's Progress and the collected series. Same with things like Dante's Inferno, Paradise Lost. Those are of the first tier. But if I polled people who actually read that first tier, maybe I'd get half to 10% who had read of the second tier, like Spencer's The Fairy Queen. You know, Same with like literature. People have probably all read The Wasteland, but have those same people try to read it, not even successfully read, but try to read Ezra Pound. Maybe half to three quarters. Like it's like there's and it's like when people bring up like Tolkien and then compare him to like E.R. Eddings or something like that. It's like, yeah, E.R. Eddings. I've read, E.R. Eddings. I enjoy it. But fundamentally, Tolkien is still the better author, even though E.R. Eddings is more imaginative, has a lot more, varied stories and stuff like that. Like it's like trying to take shots at him when history has already proven him right. Just doesn't do anything for anyone. You are of the same class as the professor who takes shots at Shakespeare. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking this over. So here's the thing. I do get it, and there you get the same thing with Shakespeare. There's a term that for it called bardolatry, where you go, "Oh, everything by Shakespeare is genius," right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's true. Shakespeare does have bad stuff, right? Like he does.
Yeah.
And there's some stuff that
I'm
people.
not a fan of The Two
What
Noble
was
Women.
that?
I'm not a fan of Midsummer, not Midsummer, A Winter's Tale. I think it's kinda bad, actually.
Yeah, there's a whole there's a lot to discuss with the Winter's Tale, but we're not going to get into it now. Anyway, like famously, Titus Andronicus is a play where anytime the red flag is like, if you look it up and see the Wikipedia summary and they go, it had a critical assessment in the second half of the 20th century. And it's like, okay, so in other words, people needed start to pretend it was good in the second half of the 20th century. Great.
Mm,
Okay. So, like, Titus Andronicus is shit.
I don't
It's the one where the girl is raped and her hands are cut off, and then like everybody gets revenge on everybody else. Um,
yeah.
whatever.
He had just gone through a
Yeah.
breakup, okay?
Um, like it's whatever.
Yeah. Sure, like, I'm not gonna claim it's, like, the best or something ridiculous like that. But, the uh, it's like but just going, like, I don't know. Shakespeare's crap is certainly better because how do I wanna put it? Like, people remember Titus Andronicus, but then can't remember a single one of Marlowe's plays. Does that make sense?
Um, sure, but they remember it because of Shakespeare's good plays, right? Like,
Okay, yeah, no, I'll be fair with that one,
and
yeah.
don't get me wrong, like this is the thing about Shakespeare. His best plays, which are like, the five great tragedies plus Midsummer, maybe Tempest is in this list. Or
Tempest
yeah,
should be in this list,
argue well,
absolutely.
I'm debating if it's a tier below or not. Like I know Chesterton believed that A Midsummer Night's Dream could be argued as Shakespeare's best play.
I don't agree with that at all.
I don't, but I do think it's like I think he's right that it's in that tier, right? Do I think
Okay.
it's the best play full stop? No, I wouldn't say that. I'm actually
Mhm.
partial to Othello of all things, even though not a lot of people agree with me. But
Weird, because
it's
Othello's
great.
great.
Yeah. I love Iago. Um, for the
Mhm.
record, by the way, if you haven't read Chesterton on Shakespeare, you absolutely should. It's fantastic. He
I just think it's kinda woke that the main character in Othello is a black man,
he's not even
alright?
fucking black. He's like whatever. Uh yeah. He's fucking Muslim. They just call him dark skin whatever. Um
No, he's a
yeah,
Moor,
he's a
like, they
Moor,
are a
but never
distinctive
mind.
group.
It doesn't matter. Um I don't care. No, Othello's great. Shakespeare correctly portraying him as less intelligent. Um, this is not even a joke. They absolutely do that. That's the like. What can I tell you?
Yeah, he's quick to move, he's a good fighter, but, he can be manipulated by people.
Yeah. I will say this about, and I know we're a little off topic, but Shakespeare's fun. So and we were kind of loose with the topic anyway.
No, like, we're gonna get back to Tolkien, like,
Oh yeah, we
we're
will.
just
We will. But um, I will say this about Othello. One of the things that it's interesting. This is where Chesterton is great on it because Chesterton's great for these sort of common sense observations. But
mhm.
this is what I've noticed is that everybody talks about, oh, he was, it was like jealousy that killed him. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to argue here that Othello, in fact, acted rationally based on the information that he had at every point of the story. He only killed Desdemona after he received proof. But the thing is, the proof wasn't very good. But that's not because Othello was like jealous and the jealousy blinded him. Amelia says it. It's because he's stupid. Thou dull Moor. Like,
Yes.
this is no joke, not kidding. That is my read of Othello. Um,
Mhm.
it's a little bit like Chesterton says something sort of like this about Hamlet, where he goes like, everybody gets Hamlet completely wrong, and they get it wrong in two directions, where either Hamlet did absolutely nothing wrong, or Hamlet did everything wrong, where he goes, in fact, Hamlet was a supremely rational actor, where they go like, oh, Hamlet dithers and doesn't act. It's like, no, Hamlet did act. He got some, he was rational in the way that he reacted. Like, he waited. My favorite read, and I got this from a meme of all things, my favorite read of Shakespeare is that the best way to understand the tragic flaws of the characters is that they are just in the wrong story. The tragedy is that they are just in the wrong situation for their personalities. Like, if you can imagine Othello in Hamlet's situation, he would have handled it completely differently and it would have worked out way better. Right? Like, he would have moved much more quickly. He would have been much less rash, or he would have been much more rash, actually. Much more rash, but he would have been correct to be rash because he would have believed what he had been told, right? Whereas if Hamlet was in Othello's situation, there's no way he would have fallen for that trick. Like, not
Right.
a million years would he
He
have
would
fallen
have
for
he
that
would have
trick.
questioned um he would have questioned Iago in certain ways that Othello just wouldn't, you
Right.
know.
He would have they were so the problem isn't so much that they had some tragic flaw that always would have doomed them. It's that their skills were for the wrong story, right?
Right.
And that's a really good test case because you could stick Othello in Hamlet's story and Hamlet in Othello's story, and that's almost a perfect 1-to-1,
Mm,
right? Where like they would have easily gotten better outcomes than they would have had in their own stories, right?
yes.
Uh, I really like this read of Shakespeare, and I think that makes a lot of sense of it. Even Romeo and Juliet, I did a bit of a 180 on Romeo and Juliet, where I was of the opinion that, like, oh, Romeo is actually a fuckboy, right? Like, which is a common thing that you see people doing, like Juliet's only 13. But Matthew Bowman pointed this out when you analyze the language of Shakespeare.
Mm,
Um, and you realize like the way that he uses iambic pentameter, the way that Romeo talks about Juliet is fundamentally different than the way that he talks about Rosalind,
that's
right?
right. Yeah.
He does not talk about like it's not meant to be like, oh, Romeo's just this guy. No, Juliet has changed him,
Yeah.
right? He is treating her differently than he treated Rosalind. That doesn't mean he's making the correct decisions all the time. It doesn't mean he's acting rationally, but you are supposed to believe that he really does love her.
Yes.
Like, that's key to the story. And yes, Juliet is young, but her youth isn't meant to be like, oh, Romeo's taking advantage of her. It's just supposed to justify that she's making a bad decision, which
Wait,
she
are people
is.
saying that Romeo's like over 15 or something?
I don't remember how old Romeo is,
Because it's like
unfortunately.
I always thought it was like not more than 15.
Yeah, not that old himself. Like, yeah, Juliet's 13, and especially in the modern day, we look at this it's very weird, and she has a nursemaid. But the point of this isn't that, oh, Juliet's incapable of knowing what love is. The point of this is that Juliet is not going to always make the correct decisions.
Right.
Like, which is quite true. She does not. Uh, there's an awful play called Anne Juliet that's on Broadway right now, which is a jukebox musical about what if Juliet didn't kill herself, which to me is so fucked up because it completely neglects that Romeo also killed himself. Like,
Right.
it's a really weird thing to make it this sort of feminist thing that Juliet would do this when Romeo makes the same decision for roughly the same reason.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Uh,
Well, no, it's like you can't even like even consider what feminists and such are doing these days. It's like it's complete total nonsense all the way is around. Uh but it's like yeah, like well with Romeo and Juliet, like yeah, no, it's different. Like Rosalind he just discards, but the second like he has a different look. But like also it's like how do I want to put it? like we know from human nature that people don't stick around if times are tough if they don't actually love the other person. They just don't. People leave each other. So in other words, he didn't just get what he wanted and then skedaddled. He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna die over this. I choose death rather than be apart from her. And I've,
Right. There's
the
that too.
yeah, like there's the drama aspect that uh um that is satisfied, the glurge sort of thing. And I'll always be a proponent of Leonardo DiCaprio's Romeo plus Juliet, 10 out of 10. Uh, but the Mercutio's Tybalt is Mercutio and Tybalt's are, and Benny's is fantastic. But no, it's like, yeah, there's drama. There's the drama of teenagers, but fundamentally it's not a, hit it and quit it situation, right? That's what like Rigoletto is about, where like the Duke just hits and quits, but unfortunately he has wooed Gilda, who chooses to die for him. But he himself has actually no idea she's done all this. Like that. There's, how do I want to put it? Like if it was a different character motivation, it would have been obvious and it would have been seen. Like with Hamlet, Academic Agent has a good set of essays about videos about how basically Hamlet was raised, in a court, with very educated court, and then sent to what was essentially law schools, like Wittenberg and stuff like that, from Shakespeare's time specifically, was a law school. Um, so in other words, he goes about it like a lawyer. Yeah, sure, he's dramatic and he's full of youth and stuff like that. But Hamlin actually has two good interpretations for it. One is that actually he doesn't need as much proof as he says he does, because he's convinced straight up from the ghost. But when he comes across his uncle praying, his motivation isn't, oh man, I didn't hear
Yep.
his confession. How do I know? It's, if I kill him now, he goes to heaven. It's actually a deeply villainous moment from Hamlet, that his motivation for sparing his uncle when he has him dead to rights is that he might be shriven. Of course, the heart of the uncle is unrepentant. Um, but that's part of the tragedy. And then the other one is that he's looking for these certain signs, for definite proofs, which I like in a vacuum. But like, I just saw the play this year. uh, I like the rash Hamlet. Sort of, not like he's calculating, right? He's smart, but there's a murderous streak to him, that is, it goes beyond any sort of law student.
Yeah,
Mm,
I mean, sorry, I wanted to make sure you were finished.
yeah, I'm finished.
Okay, so yeah, I think you're right. I think with Hamlet's an interesting story because I mentioned this on Twitter a while ago, where it was like discussion: is Hamlet in hell? Like he might be. Um, I mean, that's a deeply, deeply evil thing to do. It's not Christian in any meaningful way to say I can get my revenge, but I want him to go to hell. Like that's horrendous if you actually think about it. Um, it's also deeply irrational, like as well, for the reason that we see in the play, which is he's looking at him in the posture of prayer, right? Like we have no idea what he's actually saying to God or like why. This idea that, oh, if you're praying, you're definitely going to heaven is nonsense as well. It doesn't come from anywhere. There's no teaching. There's never been a thing, right? Like, so it seems like a moment where Hamlet's just kind of grasping for excuses.
Yeah, like it doesn't seem as rational as some would argue, which is fine, but it's like one of those things where it's like, in discussion and debates, like about, especially about character motivations, it kind of muddies the water a bit. Because it's like, with like Coriolanus, for example, my personal favorite play. Uh, like his motivations actually pretty pretty clear. He looks down on the minions. He's a proud man, a warrior, a fighter, a successful general. Therefore, why should he listen to the plebs? When people say, "Oh, just flatter them and it'll go well for you." Instead he goes, I'm not going to do anything like that. It was me and my soldiers who did all the fighting, and they want to, blah 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 blah. Um, it's this terrible pride and stuff like that. But there actually isn't many shades to his character compared to someone like Hamlet or even someone like Romeo. He's actually, as he presents himself, he's an incredibly, impressively honest man. That doesn't really bow to it. When he goes to his enemies, he presents himself honestly, and then when it, even though he betrays him later, when his mother, son, and wife come to plead for the sake of Rome, he turns aside, and Aufidius is like, I just gotta kill this guy. I should have killed him from the first or something. And then they rip out his heart on stage. Oh, but there's different kind of sets to the character. But Coriolanus isn't debated about. He's not actually that fun to debate. About his character and motivation, because he actually wears himself on his sleeve. Um, kind of like Mark Anthony. Mark Anthony will say this and that, but really, when the chips are down, Mark Anthony speaks from his heart. Whether it hurts him or helps him. And in the case of Caesar's funeral, it helps him, but in the case of Cleopatra, not so much. Um, it's difficult. Like when people are debating about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, like with that, when people talk about you know character motivations in Tolkien. It's to me, it always rings a little hollow. The character motivation is to save the world and destroy the phylactery of Sauron, the ring. Uh, like it's not, you know, like, yeah, Boromir is a complex character, but he actually talked about his motivations in the Council of Elrond. So to like it doesn't come from anywhere shocking. It's just kind of a shock that it doesn't feel like this is the kind of story where the hero's party experiences a betrayal from the inside. It's the same with Gollum. In actuality, there's kind of an expectation that they would kill him at the first reasonable opportunity, and instead they don't. Because he knows his way into Mordor. It's I don't know. Like when I hear these debates about this stuff, it doesn't actually feel like a proper literary debate, like about the character of Hamlet. You know, people talk about Hamlet in the halls of Oxford, and this was before Oxford became captured by the enemy. Like, or at the very least, with the people doing the real work. So it's like the same doesn't happen with like Boromir. Everyone kind of knows what he is. He's sort of a representative of a pagan man, of the real man, having to deal with it. He's not like, not that I'm saying he went to hell or anything like that, but he's not the same kind of person as Aragorn, who's like a completed Christian kind of deal. He's ready for it. He's going for it. You know, whatever Peter Jackson did with Aragorn, I understand there's a difference between him and the Aragorn of the books. I'm not going to talk about that. I don't actually care that much. It never bothered me. Um, but it's he there's a, how do I want to put it? Like, Aragorn could receive the loyalty of Boromir properly, and that redeemed him. But it's not actually something that is debatable. It's like with Chronicles of Narnia. Edmund is debatable. We can talk about Edmund. Eustace as well. Jillpool a little. Um, but the same can't really be said about Peter. Not because Peter isn't an interesting character in his own right. It's just that, attempts to make them complex just fall flat on their face and turn into movies like Prince Caspian. Um,
Uh,
mm,
that's an interesting point. Like, is Peter a complex character? So Peter is a great character, I think. I wouldn't say he was a necessarily complex character, but I think there's more under the surface than people will give him credit for. Like, he has his flaws. It's just that his flaws are kind of subtle. Like, what I'm thinking of is Peter is always the leader of the group. If there is an alpha among the characters in the Chronicles of the Narnia, the natural alpha is very much Peter. Right?
yeah,
Like, actually, that's like, now that I'm saying it out loud, it's like it's not even worth. It's almost not even worth discussing. He's hyper alpha.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
But anyway, he's moral, but he's hyper alpha. Yeah.
yeah,
But anyway, when you look at Peter as a character, like the main flaws you see is that occasionally he will lean on his own judgment too much, right? This
right,
is particularly, you see it in Prince Caspian, which is why the movie is so frustrating, right? He
mm,
has his flaws in the movie, but the flaws are not the same as, or in the book, sorry, but the flaws are not the ones that they give to him. Bizarrely, they give him the flaws that are Edmund's by rights.
yes,
Like, what is it? What is the mistake that he makes in the book? Well, the mistake he makes is that when Lucy tells him, "Hey, I saw Aslan. Aslan's here. You should follow me." Peter says, "Well, he might be there, but I don't really trust that you're correct about this, so I'm going to go with my own judgment." Right? I
yeah,
don't see him. I don't believe you. This, though, is actually an irrational decision when you think about it, because Lucy is the person. This exact same thing happens in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Exactly the same.
yes,
And Peter makes the exact same mistake in that book. So he really has no excuse here.
yeah,
And to be fair, Peter doesn't make an excuse, right? He says, like, I'm sorry, I was wrong,
yes,
uh, which is exactly what he should do. Edmund sides with Lucy but he does it in a redemptive way, like, hey, I was wrong the
he
first time.
knows better. Yeah,
Yeah. I was wrong the first time. I'm not going to make that mistake again. But yeah, it's an interesting moment. And even, by the way, in a really interesting moment, Lucy goes with her family, but then she wanders off and finds Aslan, and she goes like, "Wait, are you mad at me?" And Aslan just doesn't say anything and lets Lucy put the pieces together herself. And
yeah,
she's like, "Should I have just left my family?" And again, she's like, "Yeah, I should have, shouldn't I?"
yeah.
Right? Like, which is again true.
It's not like
Um,
you're in the inner city of Chicago. It's Narnia. You'll,
right. It's Narnia and it's Aslan.
yes,
Um, if you're really that convinced it was actually Aslan, then nothing should keep you from him ever.
yes,
Which, of course, is the point that Lewis is making.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, Peter as a character is an interesting one. The movie, this is the problem with modern movies, is that they don't understand character flaws that aren't their own. And that's, by the way, you said you didn't want to discuss Aragorn, but you kind of have to, because that's like the same issue, right?
right,
Edmund is a character who anybody can understand. Because his character flaw ultimately stems from weakness, right? Or I should say, an obvious weakness, right?
right,
Peter stems from something that appears to be a strength, a sort
right,
of pride in his own abilities, and a quite justified one. Peter is a remarkable person.
yes,
But Edmund stems from jealousy, it stems from bitterness, it stems from, just gamma,
yeah.
right?
In that part, but like in reality, he's more of a Bravo. Like in happier times, we'll say, he hangs out with Peter. He pals around with Peter. They're like,
Well,
can
yeah,
we break
Peter
down this?
takes, or Edmund takes the right lessons from this entire adventure,
Yes,
and even then, as Lewis portrays it, it's not like it cures him
no,
forever. He still has these issues bubble up in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, particularly.
hmm,
Uh, but nevertheless, like, he does take the right lessons from it. It humbles him, and he never forgets that he's capable of these things. You know what's interesting is that as I was thinking over the series again and rereading it, is where I go like Eustace was a gamma, and then you go, oh, was he not a gamma anymore? And I've been thinking of it, and I'm like, actually, what's so interesting to me about Eustace is that I think he's still a gamma after Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Like,
Mhm.
he's still a gamma in the Silver Chair. He's still a gamma in the Last Battle. It's just that he is a gamma who is fighting his flaws,
Yes.
right? And that makes him a much more interesting character, in my opinion, and a much more well-written character. It's not like Eustace has this revelation, then suddenly he's not a gamma anymore. Like, no, those parts of him will never go away,
Right.
but he he recognizes that these are flaws of his and is actively fighting against them. But it's still like the way he talks to Jill, you see it a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Whereas,
Uh,
like, he's, like, watching the ceremony and Jill's, like, trying to tell him something.
yeah, I'm thinking more he has a little, the little boy girl spat. Like, oh, girls are like this. As much as,
The
that's a funny
Floyd
line,
is
and
like
yes,
that.
yeah.
This is
No, as much
ridiculous.
as that's a funny line, and yes, he's a
Yes.
child and whatever. And like, we make these jokes among ourselves. There is a certain, like, he says this to Jill,
Yes.
right? Like, and it's a little bit of an odd and arrogant thing to say. And Jill gets back at him, and it's not meant to be a big deal, but
Mm.
it's kind of part of the personality profile, right? Like, you can't imagine Peter saying that, really.
No.
It's just not something Peter would say. Um, and it's not even, again, it's not that I'm trying, and even the moment where they kill the talking, my favorite moment of the series, right? That I talk about so much that Ken finally said, "You're fucking annoying, stop saying it." Uh, when
You
they
called him at
slaughter,
3 a.m., Anthony. You called
yes,
him
it
at
was.
3 a.m. just to
Uh,
talk about this.
yes, it was. Anyway, the, this was the slaughter of the talking horses in the last battle, right?
Mhm.
And Eustace just starts cursing them out, and his hands are shaking. Again, this is an entirely like, I'm not saying this to demonize Eustace, right? Like, it's an entirely understandable reaction. It's an even sympathetic reaction. You can imagine
Mhm.
yourself doing much the same thing in that scenario. But Tyrion reacts in the true alpha way, right? And you can imagine Peter reacting in a similar way. A true knight doesn't swear, calm your emotions, right?
Mhm.
Uh, he let his emotions get the better of him in the moment.
Right.
So it's an it's very interesting the way that Eustace is written, and he's one of my favorite characters in Chronicles. Obviously, the best character is Puddleglum.
Obviously.
Uh,
Obviously.
what was that?
Obviously, yes.
Yeah.
We respect Pubble.
Everybody knows this. We don't need to elaborate. Uh,
Mhm.
but still, Eustace, I think the Chronicles of Narnia generally just has incredibly well written characters, in my opinion. They're so distinct, but they're so realistic. Like, there's such a finely tuned idea of human nature in the characters in Chronicles.
Yes. But it's looking at it with, like, as you get older, you kind of just sort of look back on it and you see more things about it. Edmund, always strikes out the mind boldest, with Lucy. But Susan and Peter, also have their moments and characterizations that kind of come in there. The fact that Susan will get stuck in the world, quote unquote, is telegraphed pretty hard in the books. Um, Not
Yeah,
pretty hard, I should
it's
say, but
definitely there.
it's definitely there. Peter staying loyal after Prince Caspian is also there. It's like there's like the characters are changing, but they're still definitely the same person. Like when we meet them in A Horse and His Boy, uh the best of the Chronicles of Narnia. And not just because I like the Orientalism and how they treat the Arabs. The he Peter is the king. Edmund, is the wise counselor, but also a king in his own right. and very clever, in ways that, quite frankly, is more Gamma than Bravo. But at the same time, because his loyalty and his focus is complete within his family, it's ordered, I guess I'd say. Like
Yeah.
there's um like a disordered alpha sleeps with all the women, and sort of steals from his underlings and stuff like that. An ordered alpha, has his beautiful wife, and also, builds a country of sorts, whether a business or an actual country. Like that, it's that sort of thing. Um, since he's ordered, actually he's clever and brave, and comes up with a secret plan to flee the Calormans before they realize it. Um, Whereas, it's you don't think he'd be able to do that. He doesn't think through things. Um, in Chronicles of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Um, in the same way, there's a maturity that you can't really you can't really underestimate. Um, with like Conan the Barbarian has moments where he's a little bit different than what he is generally. Like when he's, King Conan, he's a lot more mature. He is, capable of returning to his barbarian nature, but he actually enjoys poetry and stuff like that, which he probably always enjoyed, but he never could really let himself enjoy the same way, because he's like, I don't want to kill the poets. I like his poetry. He's trying to kill you, Conan. The stuff like that, or um, how he treats, women in different states. With Queen of the Red Coast, he treats her different than some slave girls he just randomly picks up. Like there's changes within the character, but it's still very much the same character, and it's not really that much of a change. He just becomes less wild on the outside as the stories progress in the timeline. Um,
Yeah, Narnia has always stood out to me in that the characters, and especially like you're correct, as you get older, it really stands out to you more. They become they're exceptionally real. Is how I would put it. To be honest with you, like they all come across as like, oh, I have met this person, right? Like I know exactly who this is. I've seen them before, right? And even if you haven't, it's like this person with this mix of personality traits, it's like this is exactly how they would act. I'm trying to think of how to put it. Like it's just like there's a wisdom about human nature in the Chronicles of Narnia that you don't really get as much as a child, but on repeat readings is like honestly kind of stunning how accurate he is, you know, and how distinct in subtle ways all of the characters are. Like, I would argue that even no two characters really come off as like two, even with very little screen time, as interchangeable. Like, Prince Rilian is not Prince Caspian, is not King Tyrion, is not Peter,
like
right?
with
All very
Rillian.
similar characters in a lot of ways, but they are
Mm.
fundamentally distinct.
Like with Rillian and Caspian, Caspian is bold in his own way, and he's ready to, fight and stuff like that. But there's a sort of retiring to Rillian where he is willing to fight. He's still a brave king of Narnia, but at the same time, it's he's a more thoughtful man. But at the same time, he still has the qualities to be a king. And it's just good storytelling to have people who are similar, because their state, their role requires similar traits, but at the same time be definitely distinct. Like I could see Rillian reading a book of poetry that Caspian would just be like, huh, you know, I'm too busy. Like I'm doing things.
What's interesting though is that he is his father's son because he has that
Yes.
moment when he wants to go and visit the underground world. And
Mm.
the reason he doesn't, he's like, my father, sailed to the end of Narnia, right?
Yeah.
Like, I could do something like that. And then he realizes, like, he goes, I was arrogant and made a mistake. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. And like, Prince Caspian also makes a similar mistake where he goes he goes to the Long Islands or whatever it is. And Aslan's like, just go back. You need to go back. And he does, in time to meet his son again. Like uh you know, it's just little things like that. Like people will argue about, Lord of the Rings this, Conan that, or I don't even care. Like you have to understand, like I don't go on Twitter to argue about literature. My ideas are correct. The not always, but in general, you know, I'm there not to debate an argument, right? Like, so I haven't mentioned this in a very long time, but I'm going to talk about it now real quick. I believe that fundamentally you should have a steel spine of ideas that make up you. Ben is an artist, Ben is a writer, Ben is a Christian. Ben believes in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, that he was the Son of God, and that his resurrection on the third day defeated death, and his death on the cross, which my sins put him there, is where, the salvific effect happens. The Romans hung him, but the Jews called for his death. These things that milieu together that people like want to say in reality should be a steel spine. It should hold you up. These are the things about yourself that you believe and will return to when you have it. And you're like, I don't know these things about myself. Then you don't know yourself and you need to fix that, because otherwise you're just going to be a lost person. I've gone through terrible events in my life, some of which I've shared here, but the fact that I'm like, I need to start writing, or I need to play a video game like I'm doing now or something like that, has just gotten me through it. The Lord has gotten me through worse. But it was because I had something that I always went back to, for myself. Everything else is fat. Arguing about points of literature is cellulite. It's not even fat. It's bad fat. It's the grease inside your arteries. Like there's a way to, you should read articles like what I read or listened to about Hamlet, which are interesting, well developed arguments that you can go back to the play and decide, I don't actually like that. I think that he's a little more rash. He certainly seemed to believe the ghost. But at the same time, he was raised in a well-known law school that everyone then would have understood. That he had gone to a law school. It's like going to Harvard or Oxford. Similar style. Um, but like actual quality, not the woke shit. So I do see that maybe, his anger, his rashness, his manhood is being tempered by his education, because, he is sly. He did kill Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, in a cunning way. The Excuse me. But it's like, but do I want to get into an internet argument? Do I even want to start an internet argument over it? No. uh Even for things that really matter, I don't really want to start an internet argument over it. I'll rant. I'll rant about the Indians whenever I want. I absolutely despise them in ways that people don't understand. When I wake up in the morning unbidden and I see that another man by the name of Singh has killed a family of 3 in a CDL accident. 18 wheeler just fucking ripping through a family sedan. I think they don't belong in ways that would get me arrested in any other country but this one that matters. uh they don't understand how much I hate them just from the many scam calls I receive. Their thick accents cutting through an AI layer, jabbering in the background. They don't even have good enough phones for silent talking. It drives me up a wall. And maybe I should, maybe I should, I've been convicted recently, and I should, lower it a bit. I should keep it in its proper place where I may despise them for building altars for their demon gods on our, excuse me.
Are you okay there, Ben?
I just fucking hate those statues, man. I hate those fucking statues. But it's like
Yeah.
that, like what is there to debate over though? What is there to talk about? All you see is another wretched thing.
I get you. I get you.
But anyway,
Uh,
it's but point like
this
but
is
point
why
is,
I preface with like what I'm talking about is not that serious. Ben, however,
yeah, but it's like we said this was a rant stream.
yep, yep, yep.
Like if you don't, but it's like that. Why should I debate literature? The only thing I want to hear about literature is good techniques. The only thing I want to debate about the Indian deportation is how fast it's going to be. Like anything else is itself that. I wish to debate over whether the statues should be ripped down with chains or they should be detonated. That is the only debate worth talking about. It is an offense to God that this Christian nation lets them stand. It's not as bad
Yeah,
as abortion. I'll admit. I'll admit it's not like we're a very Christian nation now. But having these things up there cannot make God smile. I'm probably gonna get an FBI agent on this one. I'm finally gonna get my FBI agent. It's like an angel getting wings. In uh It's a Wonderful Life. The bell rings. Another internet schizophrenic got an FBI agent. Uh but don't actually contact me. I'm not gonna do anything. I can't. It's not appropriate yet. These things will pass. Maybe it's God's judgment for abortion and other things like that. For every child we killed as a nation, even though Anthony and I never voted for it, and it was never actually voted on, and we certainly voted against it every time it came before us, if I
yes,
may be so bold to say. Uh, these things, maybe for each one killed, we have to deal with a foreigner, who is like this. But of course, what really matters is that Anthony may have had a bad opinion about Tolkien. Not that I even disagree with him personally. I'm saying whoever he debated with. You know, I can barely get people to read my work in progresses. And yet, we're supposed to fight battles that never existed on works that are truly great. Screw off. Oh,
yeah. Uh, no,
excuse
I
me.
don't got anything else for that. The other things I want to rant on. So, first off, I feel like I should say this in the interest of now. I prefaced all of this with I didn't think it was that serious, so keep that in mind when I go. I may have in fact been wrong. The real quote from Tolkien was actually a little bit more complex than I remembered, meaning I'm the wrong one here. Um, People on Twitter got like really pissed at me, and and I just said like I am not. If you're that mad, I'm not going to argue this. But it got me to Google it and been like, oh shit, they might be right. Uh, which is really funny, in my opinion, because again, I was not taking this that seriously, even though people were. Uh, so make of that what you will, Ben. Make of it what you will.
It's the classic Gamma conundrum. They must be serious at all times, but we, who are masters of our Gamma natures, if
Yes.
we even have them, may laugh at them for their serious demeanors.
I will say, in my own defense, not for the point's just wrong. The real quote's more complicated, and I remembered it, so it doesn't have that exact wording. Uh,
Mm,
but in my own defense, I feel like I've been pretty good on Twitter of like just not getting into it with people who have been trying to provoke with me. Even this most recent thing, the guy was like, and you were quarrelsome to my joke post, and I said, if you're that upset, I'm just not gonna respond. Like I was not trying to fight people. Then I looked it up after and went, oh shit, I actually might have been like wrong all along. Which is funny. Uh
so you were actually wrong on the internet. Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
Um
Oh my goodness.
I feel like I kind of covered myself by not making this a big deal. So make of that what you will.
Sure.
Uh, However, I will argue this: my Cowboy Bebop hot take is correct, and the dude who just kept trying to get pissed at me and make me argue with him, and then I just refused to do it. I still think I'm right on that one. Uh, so this is, since this is a rant stream, we'll go on to the next rant. I said that Ed is the most important character in Cowboy Bebop, and the reason is that she puts the lie to the nihilism that's at the heart of Spike.
Yeah.
Ed joins the crew of the Bebop because she has nowhere else to go, and they kind of serve as a substitute for her family. But when she has the opportunity, she immediately leaves, so she can escape. She doesn't need to stay there, right? She has shown that there is in fact a way out, and you can get there. They aren't even trying, right? Spike's not even trying. And he's not. That's the whole point. Like, he's not trying to leave. He's not trying to move on. The Bebop's a sort of purgatory. It's a liminal state for Spike, right?
Yeah.
Uh, he sees it as like he should be dead. He's half stuck in the past and half stuck in the future. Then, when the opportunity to leave shows up, Julia shows up, he chooses the past, right? He
Yes.
doesn't choose the future. Uh, he chooses to try and go with Julia, and then when Julia is killed and Spike survives, again, he has the choice to leave. Faye begs him, literally begs him to leave, right? And Spike won't do it. He chooses to go back. He rejoins the criminal syndicate. He gets into his showdown with Vicious, and then he dies. Granted, we don't know for 100% certain that he dies, but he dies, right? Like, it's all
Right.
the signs, the symbolism is screaming that he dies. At the very least, I will say this. I would argue that if their point was anything but a sort of tragic ending for Spike, it did not come across. It failed. Like, I always took that ending to be incredibly tragic. That's not bad storytelling. It's brilliant storytelling. It's one of, the most memorable finales ever, right? Like, it's a fantastic finale. It's a great ending to Spike's story, but it's a tragic ending. Uh, I don't see the redemption. The guy was trying to argue with me, like, no, he died for Julia. He died for eternal love. And I'm like, man, he rejoined a criminal syndicate. So, if with no goal in mind except he wanted to get revenge on the guy who killed his woman, right? Like, there's no redemption in this ending. He wasn't doing something redemptive. He wasn't trying to kill Vicious because, oh, he's a mad dog and someone has to stop him, right? Like, there's no heroic motive here. There was nothing of the higher things. It was entirely like, this was, he took my love, so I'm going to kill him, and this was always my destiny. I couldn't escape it, right? Like, he couldn't escape his destiny. This is what he tells Faye. He's like, I'm not going to die. Now, Spike is telling the truth. He wasn't going to die. He was going to kill Vicious, right? Or as he put it, like, to see if he was really alive, right? Like, am I really alive? Well, in order to do this, I need to go all the way back. And ultimately, he proves he can't escape. He dies there, right? That it's not a redemptive ending. it's the ending of a sad man who ultimately could not escape his past, and not because he was impossible, but because he chose not to. I don't know. What do you take of this read on Bebop? I think Bebop is a very, very rich show to talk about. It has a lot of depth.
I think it's a very true statement. To sort of rise above your past, it requires a lot. You know, it even might require going to therapy. Like it's you have to be able to face the things that happened to you in the past. You have to accept that they're bad. You know, you have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive the in the Christian mode. You have to, which is the appropriate and proper mode. You have to forgive the people who harmed you, you know, and not like, bitch, I can't do vengeance against you, therefore I'm going to forgive you. No, it's like, if it happens to be in my hands or not, I forgive, you know. There's a difference between putting down a mad dog who's going to hurt others and, you know, taking personal vengeance. You know, the justice of the state is not something we appreciate these days. However, in a more actual society, you know, where I don't have to wear the Joker face paint every night, Julia. But the uh, for the record, I've never dated a Julia, but you know, it's like you know, we experience a very sick event. However, in a healthy society, there would be public hangings of these people. You know, in other words, there would be justice. But fortunately for us, there's also the justice of God, which is a better, higher, truer justice, of which we are but a pale imitation. So I can say, you know, I forgive the events of my past, and those people who hurt me but have not, you know, told me I'm sorry or whatever. You know, one, I don't have to think about them. They are gone with the wind. For those I do have to think about, such events have happened so that I don't actually walk into a lion's den, but rather all things that were there are now toothless. Um, Praise be to God. You know, so in other words, I don't have to be stuck. I don't need to have a blood feud, pagan vengeance over some issues, some quibbles over my past that hurt me. You know, I am free from it. I am better for it. I am closer to God for it. You know, once you break free of that mode, you can actually improve yourself in ways, you know, better than just getting ripped because you're sad, which is fine. But you know, you can get ripped because you want to see the glory of your body, you know, that God made for you. And to do that, you have to kind of be of a higher nature. As weird as it is to say, you know, while Andrew Tate is a status hog, you know, if it's status, you know, he'll go for it within a certain definition. I'd love to see how many of his paid subscribers are Indian. Uh, but in reality, you know, he is actually quite self-possessed. He might, you know, want a Bugatti or whatever like that, but you know, I've only ever seen the same Bugatti, if you get me. You know, like other strivers I've seen, they get a different one every week. You know, different this, different that. You know, they're not higher on the nature. You know, maybe I just haven't seen those videos. But it always struck me as the kind of scumbag that would rise to a certain position and enjoy it rather than be something that he isn't. You know, in medieval times, he'd probably be selling relics. In ancient Roman times, he'd probably be, you know, a new man senator, you know, rising to the top, or a traitorous vizier, and you know, and whatever. You know, that's the kind of person. That's my read of him. You know, so but he's not really bogged down with his past. Even when you know, he wants to talk to guys about getting better, he almost completely ignores it. So when like other people, you know, when they talk about their past, like I've known people who I know people who are still in their family homes with their own families, except that they're not actually doing anything with it. They will be forgotten when they die, except by their family, which is normal, but disappointing for what you know of them. all these people, all these different paths that I'm bringing up, all these different like mindsets. Spike could have chosen any of them. He could have been he could have started his own dojo. He actually could have kept bounty hunting. That actually wouldn't have been too bad of a future for him. You know, it's exciting. It's not really well paying, but at the same time, it's free. Uh, you know, and he doesn't have to like worry about his past or anything like that. He could have um, what's another one he could have done? He could have joined law enforcement, you know, worked out a deal. I'm sure that there was some person there who would have known about his criminal past, not given a shit, given him a deputy badge or something, and told him this is what you're gonna do. You know, I think wasn't Jet an officer, a police officer of some kind, before he joined our
Yes.
crew. You know, like there's options that are in front of Spike that all he has to do is reach down and pick it up, or at the very least, not give it up when his past came knocking. When, you know, for me, my big thing was I was angry at my dad, and my dad gave me the right to be angry at him. When my dad, in his old age, after his strokes, which happened while he was yelling at me for something I was already doing, literally leaving the house to do a job while he was yelling at me to get a summer job. You know, that's how bad it was. When he comes up and he tries to be, you know, the old dog, you know, I just laugh at him. You know, I've forgiven him. I don't have to fight this. You know, I've already passed through the fire. The past is to me nothing but a foul memory. And if I happen to feel that old sin of wrath rising up in me about my father, I go to God with it. God, you know, I have won this battle again and again. Give me the strength to win this battle. And he does. He does freely. Weird how that works out. But with and other people I've known, you know, for I've known I've dated even a girl who had terrible exes, horrible, and you know she had issues forgiving them. You know, PTSD, like as in like shuts down and for like 10 seconds and then comes back up, you know, out of herself. But at the same time, she was still living her appropriate Christian life. She was still making decisions that were more than just you know, oh me, oh my poor past. You know, it was quite nice to see compared to some of the other people that were around me at the time. Another fellow who experienced the absolute heights that you can attain as an engineer and then was thrown down because of his own wrath, as well as some other indiscretions that, you know, that were his particular sins. Um, you know, it's, you know, he doesn't actually get consumed by his past. You know, when his ex-wife calls him for money, he goes, no, bitch. Which is the appropriate response to a traitorous ex-wife, you know, for a non-Christian anyway. Um, and by the way, there's no forgiveness for a traitorous ex-wife. You know, in Christianity, she gets divorced, and she gets divorced ASAP. You know, if you know, Jesus is clear about it. You know, it's you know, it's one of those things where there's, you know, there's a point to forgive them, right? Give up the hurt and pain, but at the same time, you know, there's a being a realistic about it. Spike wasn't realistic about it. In the end, he wanted the comfort of the old wounds. He wanted that old pain, uh, even though it was pain. Even though he could have gone with Faye and lived an exciting life, or he could have, you know, done any of the other options I described. Heck, they could have made a good home for Eddie. But no, they didn't do any of that. And, you know, he died for it. Um, and he deserved to die for it, quite frankly. When you go back to a dog, like, go back like a dog to your vomit for those kind of stakes, like not just a sin, right? This isn't like a dude struggling with with pornography and having issues with it. This is, you know, people were being murdered over this. It's more, you know.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I would tend to agree with your take on this. That's my impression of the finale. I think that is the message of the show as well. Uh, it is one of the great benefits of Bebop, and one of the reasons it's held up so well is that it doesn't tell you what to think, right? Like, it does leave you to draw your own conclusions. It doesn't say, like, oh, Spike's damned, oh, Spike's saved, or whatever. With that said, to me, that's the only real way to take what goes on at the ending, right? Like the Cowboy Bebop is a noir tragedy, in my opinion. That's how I've always read the show. It's a noir tragedy, and the two most tragic characters are Spike and Faye. Uh, Faye is Faye's a fascinating character who is remembered completely wrongly. Like, the live action show got her so utterly wrong that it was almost comical, right? Like, the entire point of Faye as a character is that she is a completely terrible fit for the life that she is living. She should not be there. The fact that she is there is because she has to be. She has one asset to her that is useful in this world, and that is her looks, right? She is not particularly intelligent. She is not a particularly good shot. She is not particularly ruthless, right? Like, she's not competent. What she is really attractive. And all she can do, the only thing she's able to do, is leverage this as much as she can. She doesn't want to. She's not good at it, right? She wishes she didn't have to, but she has no choice because, due to circumstances that were not her fault and beyond her control, she was put into a situation where this is her only choice. Like, but much like with Ed, she's in this situation, and this is what she's chosen to do with it, right? Like, she's chosen to go on the run and do this bounty hunting thing that she is objectively terrible at, right? Like, it's, on one hand, she's a horribly tragic figure, but on the other hand, it's like, you can't try anything else. You see the little bit of Faye from her past, and she was like almost, she was bubbly. She was very, very different from the character who we see. She was a lot more of, like, I don't know how I would describe it. Like, I would almost say, like, what's her face from Firefly? Kaylee. That was it. Yeah. Kaylee from Firefly. She gave a little bit of that vibe off. A lot more wholesome, a lot more bubbly. And that person is gone, and you feel for her for this, but at the same time, it's like, what are you trying to do to, I don't know, escape your situation? It's like, yeah, you could say she's doing the bounty hunting and she's doing that because she has to, but Ed is a good example of, like, these are people who have accepted the situation they're in. That's like the point of the Bebop. Again, it's a liminal space, right? The entire point of the Bebop as a ship, as a crew, they're here to escape their problems, right? Jet was a cop, things went sour, now he's on the Bebop. Uh, Spike was in this gang, things went sour, now he's on the Bebop. Faye fell in with this guy who ended up betraying her and getting her trapped in debt. Now she's on the Bebop. Ed has no family, now she's on the Bebop, but she leaves once she finds what she's looking for, right? Like, Ed meets her father and realizes the Bebop is not a real substitute. And that's what they need to understand. Faye, to her credit, seems to realize that things can't go on forever the way they are. She needs to make some sort of choice, right? She tries to choose Spike, but she doesn't go all the way. She never gives a real confession, Spike, right? Like, the most she could say is, I don't want you to die. Yeah, but she never actually, like, makes a move on Spike, probably because she knows that Spike is still infatuated with Julia. Uh, so she knows she's always going to be second fiddle. Meanwhile, Spike never goes for the girl who's directly in front of him and clearly interested in him and who he could make a life with. Faye wants to, but she can't make that choice. She doesn't actually make that move because, again, the Bebop is where you go to hide from your problems. With the exception, to be fair, I guess, of Jet, because, as he likes to point out, the Bebop is his ship. It's not Spike's ship, right? it's kind of like where he has chosen to go as his next place, and he almost I almost see Jet as the maintainer of the Bebop, right? Like it's a refuge for these people, and Jet's the one maintaining it. You know, uh, but yeah, like Spike ultimately cannot make the choice he really needs to make. He chooses to go back into a world of violence and cruelty and death, and that is where he meets his end. And sure, maybe he survived. We see him collapse, but he survives worse things throughout the show, as many people point out, like in the famous episode. What I forget the name of it, but probably the most famous episode of the show, the one where he's thrown through the church out the window. You know, uh, in that episode, like he clearly survives something worse than what happens to him in Real Folk Blues, which is the name of the finale. But at the same time, it's like his story is over and by his own choice. So, I think it's a great show. I think it's a classic of I think it's a postmodern classic, and I think it avoids the charge of nihilism. But I ultimately think that Spike does. I think that you have to read it as a tragic ending for Spike. I think that any other ending kind of it cheapens the point of Cowboy Bebop if you read it in any other way. The point of Cowboy Bebop
Right.
is that you can't you need to move forward, right? You can't just stay in this purgatorial state forever. When you're stuck between the past and the future, you need to go to the future. Faye had a future in front of her. That future could have been with Spike. She chooses not to ultimately make her move. She tries, but Spike holds her back. He won't make that move. He won't give her the future that she needs.
Yeah. And it's difficult, because we're talking about characters, who are written and performed and all this jazz. But I've seen it in my own life, in the lives of others around me. Like I've seen it even with famous people. They never seem to get the break that you think they might deserve or not, or go anywhere. They make choices. You hear about actors talking about it all the time. Um, being stuck typecast or something. Becomes a purgatory, even if it might have been a great big break. It's the same sort of way with some of the stuff with politics and whatnot. People look to the politics, for salvation, almost a sort of worldly salvation. But in reality, it comes from God, in the service of God. Like there's this terrible, terrible image because it's another lie of like, the pagan gods are like a cat you're petting. But when you stop petting, they actually bring the hand back to you so you continue to pet like a cat would. When in reality, they might do that if it's the tack to damn your soul. Um, but it's at the same time, in reality, the person who made that, assuming it's a man, but it's probably not, in some way or other, it speaks to a longing, a desire for God, uh, to fill that hole of love that can only be done when you have a North Star like God, guiding your life and actions. Um, it's part of the reason why Indians are so schizophrenic about how they act with everything. It's because they have 1,000 gods and 1,000 moralities, but in reality, that morality is honor the gods and respect the Brahmin, and anything else they do is acceptable. Um, it creates a culture where you might just be scrolling on Twitter and you hear about the poo flinging festival that they have, other things like that. Like it comes down to it, you never were racist against Indians until you actually met the Indian culture. Um, you know, it's hard to say, is Twitter itself a purgatory? You're always hearing about things, but then nothing ever happens, except things are happening. It's just that not that much, and not nearly enough to throw down the needle. Trump says something, and morons like some of the people that Anthony has been talking to, will go, "Why isn't this happening this second? He just talked about it." he was talking about signing a piece of paper. Every single tier of American government support has been Democrat captured. Every single one. There isn't a single one. The thing that you should be worried about is whether or not bad things are going to happen when the EBT benefits die in a week. I really hope you don't live in that kind of neighborhood because you'll be depending on God for safety if half of those TikToks that get posted about African Americans threatening people. It's like, oh, if we don't get our EBT, we're going to burn the place down. Like, and it's like 40 million people on EBT, 1.5 of our budget. That's so it's better to starve or live, I should say. Get out of that purgatory. Either go to hell or heaven. I don't care which. Uh, but you hear about that stuff, right? You hear about it on the internet. You're forced to make decisions and judgment calls on things that, quite frankly, you never were supposed to. The people who were ruled by Charlemagne should have only should only have heard about his tax policy and how good the Pope's being to him at any given day. Uh, what Muslims he's thrown back from the borders, not his day-to-day minutia of the royal court, which actually doesn't matter nearly as much as people say. You could have cut out half of Game of Thrones by cutting out all the useless court maneuvering. Um, it's like, yeah, sure, the line where it's like there's a difference between power and influence. Like when Littlefinger tries to threaten Cersei like a moron, and she has him almost thrown off the side. Yeah, like fundamentally, it was just that forever. It wasn't actually that clever. It was just people with influence manipulating people with power. And then when somebody tries to go mask off and try to turn the influence into real power, the person with real power just bitch slaps them until they're back in line. And quite frankly, she should have killed them. That would have actually been truer to her character, quite frankly. The it's hard because you're dealing with other people, right? You're dealing with other people who have their own opinions. But the problem is that 9 times out of 10, the rando's going to be wrong. I might even be wrong, and something's going to happen. The nothing ever happens button is going to short, and I'm going to be totally wrong, and that's fine. You know, I'm wrong more often than not some days. Uh, but you get what I'm saying, Anthony. Like it's kind of this is kind of useless, and I'm getting a little more and more tired of it. I don't like having to see things from like the Indian perspective or whatever. It was funny when it was like jewelry, haggling. Because you see a Jewish guy bullying an Indian guy, and it's pretty funny, because it's just ridiculous nonsense. Uh, but at the same time, because it's like, oh, my friend, this, buddy, that's like twice what they're worth, and it's 4 times what you paid for. I'll pay this. Oh, I don't have a product. Oh, you know, nonsensical numberings. Even normal people are experiencing that stuff. They experience it more than they do the actual crime statistics they should be worried about. So, ranting. Like honestly, I feel better about saying it with my voice attached to myself than I do posting about it on Twitter or seeing these things on Twitter, because it actually feels real now that I'm saying something, and it isn't just some sort of simulacrum or whatever the. I'm trying not to swear. I accidentally swore at church, and I'm trying to kick back. But whatever the nonsense was being bandied about that stuff, quite frankly, doesn't come to anything real. In fact, it might even be a degradation on how you can think about the world. There's action and reaction at best. There's the hand of God. And quite frankly, I think God switches our timelines constantly. Like moving things around to his will, his glory, his benefit, for the beautiful things that he likes and delights in. Uh,
I mean, if he does, I wouldn't know it anyway. So I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe.
I'm saying timelines because it's like it's easier to understand that concept than it is like there's a million miracles going around you every day of every hour. It's you can't even comprehend the scale. Uh Plus I'm thinking of a character I wrote who was a seer. So in other words, she saw God change the timeline all the time. She has a seizure anytime someone averts the apocalypse. That's very funny.
That's
Uh
pretty good. Uh I know in the Catholic tradition there is at least one saint who is supposed to have prevented the apocalypse once. That was Saint Vincent Ferrer. He is very real, like as a person. I mean, obviously, I like you literally can't confirm if the apocalypse would have happened, but uh, he was a very very real person though. Like, and he was known as a miracle worker. And when you look, like, I recently read a biography of him. Uh, the biography is wild. It's literally like everywhere he went, he did dozens of miracles. And it was like, he raised many, many, many people from the dead. And to be clear here, when I say, like, oh, he's real, I don't mean he's real in the sense of, like, oh, those obscure first century martyrs where we have like a story of, one dramatic story, and like, but we have good reason to think they're real. No, I mean, like, he was well known. Writing of his survived. Like, more than survived, we have his homilies and sermons. We have a book by him on like how to live the spiritual life. Like, St. Vincent Ferrer uh was a popular and respected figure in the Middle Ages, and apparently was just constantly working miracles. like everywhere he went. Many people raised from the dead. Some of the stories I would have to assume aren't true, only because they sound kind of suspect to me. Like the time he hid a woman's affair from her husband because, she repented. Um, you know, things like that. But like, still, I guess the reason that I bring this up is to say, yeah, I think you can prevent the apocalypse. Sure. I think there are times that the apocalypse was probably going to come and some saint like uh did something extreme and prevented it.
yeah. Uh
Do I know that Saint Vincent Ferrer was that person? I mean, I don't know that he was that person. Do I think he plausibly could have been that person? I mean, maybe, I don't know. I
well, it's
wasn't
like
there.
this is Pinkerton's ghost rules, so it's like, yeah, Sean Russo has, gone back in time once again to save the world or whatever.
Yes.
Uh
Sean Russo's actually St. Vincent Ferrer.
there's actually 30 Sean Russos in a set of
Yes.
used car dealerships.
This doesn't
They just
actually make any sense, by the way. Like, we know who his mother was, but it's funny, so.
yes. But no, like there are things to debate about, and just like things to rant about, but it's like in reality, people arguing about Tolkien on the internet is just going against a trend where people were arguing for Tolkien on the internet, not even months ago. I'm sure, like you can't really argue against like Rome because what do you compare Rome to? Other people who are pretending to be Rome. The yes, the Russian Empire who called themselves after Caesar. The Germans who called themselves after like it's like there's Rome and then there's people who are pretending to be Rome or were Rome reborn. It doesn't quite work. What are you going to do? Islamic Caliphate Max or something? It's no, no. Um, but it's like what was there to debate about? Rome was bad, actually. No. Tolkien was bad, actually. No. Like these things are smart boys, or just people fighting over minutia just to fight, because they're not actually thinking. They're not experiencing life. Maybe the reason why I'm so negatively affected by things like the Indian statue of their demon gods being made is because I think about it. You know, it's like I actually put the thought in. Uh, I've read the Old Testament a few times, you know, just dabbled. But God gets really angry at Israel. God puts them to the sword. He lets their enemy do whatever they want to them. And admittedly, he'll then punish the enemy, right? The enemy who also knows about God and is actively ignoring him. But at the same time, he's like, yeah, have at him. You know, murder who you want. You know, you're gonna get punished for it. You should repent. But you know, like Nineveh, right? It was eventually destroyed. They forgot about God, but they repented in their time. You know, in the time of Jonah. But at the same time, they died in their sin of cruelty, malice, and wrath and pride. You know, tearing apart nation after nation, as much God's tool of judgment as they were judged. Uh, you know, what kind of rant or wrath or whatever you want can be applied to it? I don't know. It's too much for me to think about. It's something that you know you have to have like actual logic to apply to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I agree. But last thing, I got 3 brilliant moves in one chess game today, so it's a good day.
And Fiona survived another shift at work. Good work, Fiona. Good work.
Yeah, that too.
Also, good job on the brilliant moves, Anthony.
Thank you, Ben. Was waiting.
I know, and I made you wait. The best part about being an artist or a writer is that you can like actually play with the tropes and stuff like that. And if you have a friend who's a writer, you can then play with the stuff. You know, again, it gets like double and triple meaning. I can only imagine how many layers of meaning, you know, Tolkien and Lewis and their friend got to in their Inkling set. It must have been absolutely incomprehensible uh, in all the best ways. Hmm. Uh, Halloween unfortunately falls on, uh, excuse me, some EBTs are rather telling ATM, even through my store. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Fiona. Pray for Fiona that she survives. Uh,
Yeah.
why isn't my calendar pulling up? I think Halloween is on a Friday, and I'm gonna be
Ooh, we
working.
have a surprise.
Oh, we do have a surprise. I wish I could live stream through it. Uh, but sadly, um, what the heck? But sadly, I'm just not available. Like Halloween night is too big of a night for me to bounce. For to not bounce. Um, but I will be we'll be talking about it that Sunday, and we might even do some little Halloween things, even though it's a bit late. Uh,
Gonna be
uh,
dope.
it's gonna be dope. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We've been looking forward to this. If you supported the Kickstarter, you know what it is. You know who it is, and you're enjoying it. We've I wish we had more feedback, but the ones who have really enjoyed it, and I'm so happy that they have. And that's the whole point. Like
It's
fundamentally,
real good.
it's real good. You have to live in the times that you're given to live in. Like whatever you know, like and this ties into Lord of the Rings all the way back from downtown. You know, they taught you know, there's that famous line where it's like, you know, uh what is it? It's like these are the times that we have to live in, something like that. Not all of us asked to see such times. It's that line. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember it at all?
No, wait, now I'm confused. What am I meant to
It's
remember?
that not all of us asked to see such times line.
Oh, yes.
I just can't
Uh,
remember.
That is a real Lord of the Rings line from the book, I'm pretty sure. I will have you know, by the way, that I did publicly admit that I got the quote wrong, so I have ritually
Disemboweled yourself
yeah, there you go.
with pasta. You
Exactly.
Italian.
Italians. Uh
He just whips out a large rigatoni and starts
yes.
carving.
What the fuck?
His secondary has a katana made of spaghetti. Or is
This
it
is
more of
my
a
my
is
new
it
Japanese Italian fusion restaurant advertisement.
spaghettuku?
On that note, good night.
Hold on. Is it more of a flagellation where you put meatballs at the end of a cat of nine tails of spaghetti?
It's
Come
like
on,
that Rick
Anthony.
and Morty where they learn that on the one planet, if you commit suicide, your insides turn to spaghetti with sauce.
All right. I've run the joke out, much like Rick and Morty.